it's Finn. So, I've been asked if I would do a video on how I knew I was trans. I have talked about it in other vids, but I don't think I've done a vid specifically about how I knew. So, I'll try and do that as best as I can. It's kind of weird, really, because obviously I kind of superimpose what I know now about trans on what I experienced as a kid. So, you know, some of the words I use now to explain how I felt, I didn't know back then. So it's kind of quite hard to kind of talk from a back then perspective without adding what I know now, if that makes sense. But anyway, so for me, how I knew I was trans, well, I didn't really, to be fair. I knew something was different, but you see, I'm 39, and when I was growing up, there really wasn't anything out there about trans, you know, even kind of things about being gay weren't really out there. So anything kind of different from the norm, I just had no concept of, really. I didn't know the first thing about what it meant to be transgender. I'd never even heard the word. I'd heard transsexual, and I'd kind of seen and heard of men who became women, and I'd seen some really dodgy kind of like documentaries and some kind of almost kind of portrayed as kind of quite freakish. So it was never something that I kind of like tallied up with how I felt, and I certainly didn't think it was possible for a female-bodied person to become male. I had no idea. You know, I thought that if a female-bodied person wanted to become male, then that would just mean being a tomboy, really. I had no idea it was possible. Based on what I know now, I think if it had been about at school, if we'd had topics on it and discussions about it, I'd have known back at a very young age that I was trans. But because nothing trans-related came into my vocabulary, I had no words for it, I had no experience of it, I couldn't match up what I was feeling to the term trans. But growing up, what I did feel was just very, very different in my own skin. From everything, I had a pretty difficult childhood, which didn't help things. But I guess from about the age of about 9 or 10, I started to really feel different. Because up until that point, I'd been accepted for exactly who I was. I was always a kid that liked karate, skateboarding. My dad and my granddad would always buy me kind of quite male toys. I used to love those kind of polystyrene aeroplane things that you put together and fly, and little action jackmen and stuff like that. And I loved my skateboard. I had long hair, and you know, at times I'd wear kind of like more female stuff, but I typically dressed quite boyish at that age and did kind of quite male stuff, and it was normal. I didn't think anything of it until about the age of probably about 8, 9, maybe 10, when suddenly that stopped being okay. I went from being accepted to, you know, getting comments all the time, sit like a lady, act like a lady. Suddenly my behaviour wasn't so appropriate. Suddenly blue velvet dresses were coming out when Nan and Grandad turned up, and I did not feel right, and I didn't know why at all. I didn't get why. And then my body started developing, and that just completely threw me. I just remember feeling fat, and I've heard other people describe it like this. I knew I wasn't fat, but the way my body was developing, you know, my butt was getting bigger and I was getting kind of like curves and stuff, and I felt hideously fat. And as my chest was developing, I felt mortified. I felt so ashamed of my chest, and I couldn't quite put my finger on why. My dad took me shopping for a bra. I lived with my dad because my mum and my dad split up, and we lived with my dad, and he took me shopping for my first bra, and I felt like I'd completely let him down. But I couldn't put it into words, really. I would try and put it into words. I just couldn't. I asked my dad about, you know, why, you know, was I fat? And I was always asking him, am I fat? And he said, no, you're just developing into a lady. And I just felt mortified at that. and some of this is kind of like looking back with these eyes I've got now. But I used to kind of like love the way boys were shaped, the way their t-shirts hung on them so like straight down, and the way their bodies were just straight up and down. And basically I stopped eating. I discovered that if I kept my weight very, very low, I could also keep my breasts very, very small, and my body very straight. I've got a very boyish figure when I'm skinny. I think most people have, but I have especially. I just kind of like lose all bum, all hips, and all my top. I struggled with this for years, and it's only now with what I know that I realise I was trying to make myself more male looking. I've had different therapy over the years to help, you know, with the anorexia problems I had and the other eating disorders I had, but it never worked, because for me it wasn't about kind of like the pictures in the magazines and being like an attractive girl. It was trying to make my body male. I understand that now. I didn't back then, but I do now. And I would see kind of quite androgynous women and be very, very jealous of kind of women who had that kind of very androgynous shape. I loved it and couldn't really understand why. You know, and I kind of had times where as I grew up, where I did try and dress more feminine, but it was never quite me. It never felt quite right. And then I'd go into a kind of a more boyish phase again, but then I didn't fit socially and felt awkward, and I could just never find myself. And now the thing is, growing up, as I said, I did have problems in my childhood, so all of this kind of like not feeling right in my own skin, I attributed to a difficult childhood. I thought, oh, that's what it is, you know, just had a difficult time growing up, so maybe that's what it is. But things just didn't improve as I got older. Even as I moved out of the family home and things settled, I still didn't feel right. And I came out as gay. I tried to come out as gay quite a few times, and I thought, okay, maybe that's the answer, because maybe I'm gay and coming out will make me feel better. And it was like a bit of the answer, just like my childhood was a bit of the answer about why I felt off. But it wasn't the whole answer, and nor was being gay the whole answer. I definitely fancied women more than I fancied men. I tried lots of times to have relationships with men. Actually, I'd get on much better with men than with women. Women still frighten me. I would always find it so much easier to connect with women. To connect with men. And then I'd mistake that for kind of like attraction, and then we'd end up in a relationship, and the sex wouldn't work. But I kept gravitating towards men because that's where I felt more comfortable. You know, that interaction, I love that. You know, my male partners became my best friends, but that's all they should have been, because sexually it didn't work. So when I came out as gay and started having sex with women, that definitely felt right, the sex bit, but it wasn't the whole story. Since coming out as trans, one of my friends said to me that she was really surprised when I came out as a lesbian, that I suddenly went uber male. You know, I became dad to the gerbils, and I started dressing very manly, wearing a shirt and tie and all of that sort of stuff. And she said that confused her, because surely as a lesbian I would embrace all things feminine. And I hadn't really thought about that. But I do realise now that my coming out as gay was my kind of green card to dress in a very masculine way, because as a woman dressing in a masculine way, I was kind of like not fitting in. You know, it wasn't acceptable. But it's more socially acceptable for a lesbian to dress like a man. So for me, that was kind of like my green card to just be as male as I wanted, like coming out. So yeah, I had like the childhood on the one hand. I thought that might be some of the answer about why I feel odd, but I still don't feel any better. Being gay might be some of the answer, but I still don't feel any better. And my mental health just deteriorated over the years, just because of this not feeling right in my own skin, just feeling so depressed, so anxious, something just not being right, hating myself, hating my body. There'd be times when I would be really dealing quite well with my eating problems and be able to see that my body was a healthy weight, but still all I could see was fat, and I hated it and had no idea why. My mental health problems got so bad that, as I've shared lots of times, I took to drinking a lot and taking a lot of drugs in order to deal with pain, because I couldn't deal with the amount of anxiety I had. And for me it was a way of hiding, because I couldn't get to the bottom of what the hell was going on with me, and it was too painful to try. The world was too painful, trying to be sociable in the world, trying to be the person I was, was supposed to be in the world. I was trying to be female. I just could not fit. And so I escaped, what started as light use of drugs and drink. I discovered I could turn the off switch in my head off permanently, and I loved it. It gave me an escape from all this stuff that was going on inside. But of course that backfired, because eventually, you try and hide for something for long enough, and it'll still come bite you on the arse quite a lot harder. So I went into treatment for mental health problems. I had gone almost 2.5 years worth of really in-depth therapy, and I really thought, okay, this is where I'm going to find my answer. I got diagnosed with personality disorders, and I thought, right, this now makes sense. This is why I've been feeling odd, and once I've done this therapy, I'm going to feel much better. And again, I came out of therapy and thought, things are a little bit better, a little bit of the answer, but still not the whole answer. So I went back to drinking quite a lot. And then I got sober in 2010, August 2010. Going to AA and hearing everybody else saying exactly the sort of thing I'd been feeling growing up. Not feeling right in my own skin, not being able to make life work, not being able to take life on life's terms, feeling different than everybody else. A lot of alcoholics feel this way, and I really related to that. And I thought that was my answer. But it still wasn't. It still wasn't. Again, part of the answer, and it just feels like my life has been a gradual awakening towards the big trans kind of like revelation, because I've got part of the answers as I've gone along. But anyway, I got sober in the August of 2010, and in the summer of 2011, things started to come to the surface again. Now, I'd had this kind of like not feeling right with myself over the years. At times I had expressed to other people that I'd like to be male, and then quickly retracted it, because I just knew how odd it sounded, or thought it sounded odd. But that all started to come back. Now, I was the healthiest weight I'd ever been after getting sober, and the healthiest head I'd ever had, ever, in my life. And so I could look at myself really logically and say, you know what, you've actually got a really good body. It's fit, it's healthy, it's a perfect weight, it's fine. So why do I still hate it? Why do I still hate it so much? And I really didn't know. And then in this summer of 2011, me and my best mate had a random conversation out of the blue about all things gender. And I shared with him how I really didn't feel female, and I really didn't feel male, and I really felt confused about my gender, and I really didn't get it. And this opened up me coming home, and for the first time, actually doing some research on everything trans. What time are we at? Oh my god. Yeah, so I did some research on everything trans, and I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that you could actually physically take hormones and become male. I couldn't believe that top surgery was available, and it was okay not to feel ashamed of my chest. There were lots of other people out there that wanted their boobs removed. It wasn't just me. And I was just reading so many different stories of people that had known all their lives, of people like myself that had come to a gradual realisation over their years, even like later on in life, come to realisation they were trans. And the more I was reading about this term trans, the more alarm bells were ringing with me that this so well explained what had been going on. Other people that had spoken about how they'd kind of like not eaten in order to keep their body male, how they just felt they didn't fit in the world, and all of it was like, oh my word, this is me. But I really didn't know, because there was still this, I don't feel 100% male, and even though I was reading that a lot of people who were trans didn't feel 100% male, I thought, well, surely I must feel 100% male, otherwise I can't be doing this, I don't know. So I decided what I was going to do, because I accepted at that point that I was definitely under the trans umbrella, that my gender was different than the norm, in that, how I want to express my gender was definitely different, and I wanted to start exploring that. So I decided to just become more male. I mean, as it was over the last kind of like, since about 2005, 5, I'd been getting kind of more and more male anyway in the way I was dressing. So I decided in the summer of 2011 to just amp it up. You know, I'd go completely male orientated, have a shorter haircut, and I'd buy a binder. I'd still keep my name and still go by she, but I'd just dress more masculine and hope that made me feel better about my body and better about myself. That was the plan. So I got a binder, and that was towards the end of the year, but in November 2011. I got this binder, and it turned up, and I put it on, struggled to put it on, and I looked in the mirror, and I just cried. I just cried, because I looked at my chest, and it was flat, and there was no move sticking out, and it was just so right. I was just like, this is the chest I should have, this is just so right. And at that very moment, I absolutely knew that what I really wanted was a male body, that what I really felt inside was male, and that my expression outside should be male. So then I started the process of just talking to as many people as I could. I was very lucky that I've got an old friend who is trans and was starting the process as well, so he helped me a lot. I got lots of help online, because it was really hard, because I really wanted it to be, I'm definitely 100% male, no question, but it wasn't like that. By about Christmas time, 2011, I was probably at about 85-90% sure that I was male and wanted to live as male, and I wasn't getting any more sure, and I just decided that I was going to take a leap of faith, that I was just going to try walking in male shoes and see what happened, because I knew that I could spend months and months and months mulling it over, but unless I actually walked it, I wasn't going to find out, which was scary, because I thought, what if I say this out loud and then I think, oh my god, that's wrong? But I decided I'd rather say it out loud and realise it was wrong than spend God knows how many more months agonising and having to fight off bad thoughts about wanting to starve myself because of my body issues and everything. So, with the help of Nat, we devised a plan, and at the end of January 2012, I came out to my mum and brother, and that was an amazing step. To hear my mum kind of talk about me from when I was younger and how she could kind of see that there was something different about me, and she didn't understand either, that was amazing to have that conversation with my mum. And then I came out on a large scale in AA and to my friends. And as scary as that all was, it was such an amazing process, because it just helped me to realise that this was definitely right. With every passing day, with how more and more I was being called Finn and being called he, I just knew. It just became a process of over a period of a few weeks. I went from being really wobbly and unsure about my identity. I was definitely sure I wanted to be more male, but I wasn't sure of like completely being trans, and going through the transition process medically was for me. But yeah, the more I said I'm male, the more I lived as a man, the more I knew, you know, that leap of faith was the scariest leap I've ever taken. But it was a wise one for me, because it really did help me to be sure. And, you know, I'm still evolving. I'm absolutely 100% sure now that this is what I want to do. You know, being related to as a man, living as a man, feels so right. For the first time in my life, I am not confused at all about who I am. I'm starting to really feel complete. I really do know now that I've got my answer that I've been looking for years. And now I've got testosterone in my body as well. There's this feeling of peace in me that I've got the right hormone. And even though there's a lot of growth and change to go yet, I feel so right in myself. In terms of my gender expression, that's still evolving. That's something I'm going to talk about in more detail in another video. But yeah, for me, how I knew I was trans has been a very long and kind of like unwinding process. You know, it's been a gradual awakening over the years to the point where I am now. And that's my story. So I hope that's helped. If you'd like to know anything at all, if there's anything I haven't said or anything you want me to expand on, please do drop me a message. I'm always happy to chat. and share anything. So, because I know how confusing it is when all this starts happening and it's all really scary. But don't forget to enjoy it. You know, this is an amazing experience. It really is. For all the difficulty, it is amazing. I consider myself very lucky to be going on a journey to the centre of myself, because a lot of people walk through life and never really have to really dig inside themselves like you do when you're going through this stuff. And you know, a good friend of mine said to me, do not forget to enjoy this process of finding the real you. It's amazing. And he was right. And I've tried to remember that all the times it's hard. So just enjoy it. Yeah. Okay, I'll leave it as that. I will see you soon for another update. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.